I remember when I was at my job, I was like sketching out like a little system diagram and thinking, all right, I'm going to have a character class, and then under that, there's going to be attacks that they all share,
Hmm.
and I'm going to have separate controllers for enemies and characters and things like that. So I really enjoyed like the technical side of sort of architecting.
You could spend 20 minutes on a drawing, post it online, and get a mountain of praise. Or you could spend months or even years working on an indie game, release it, and get ripped apart in the reviews. That's just the nature of the industry. Every frame of an indie game is an expression of these indie developers. All right, hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Indie Neighbor. Today I'm talking to Jack about his game Vitrified, which is a post-apocalyptic Metroidvania survival teamwork based game. It's like a 2D platformer. So go ahead, Jack. Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jack. I've been working on this game for about 4 years in my spare time. I'm sort of getting to a stage where I'm showing it to people and realizing I've got a sort of a real game on my hands, and it's quite nice to see. I've got a demo out, and I'm sort of pushing towards releasing at the end of this year. Um, and yeah, I'm just sort of excited to chat about game dev and
I guess I should say kind of I got in the beginning of the game. There's a second part to it. Depends on teamwork with your robotic friend Alan. Um,
mm,
I think that's a huge aspect of the game. So let's start there
yeah.
and dive into it. Who's Alan and how does this play?
So Alan is sort of your robot friend that helps you out right at the start of the game, and he basically you decide to stick together as you go through this post-apocalyptic wasteland. So the game opens, you're stuck in a hole, and you find out later that you were dumped there by raiders, and there's no explanation why. All you know is that this friendly robot who's really positive and optimistic
Hmm.
sort of helps you out the hole. And he's got a very sort of C3PO coded personality, or Crichton from Red Dwarf, if you've seen that. And it's very like peppy, sort of traditional English butler robot called Alan. And the the game focuses on the dynamic between the player and Alan, and the main goal for the game was to have a companion NPC that's uh, powerful and sort of helpful and like essential to going through the game, rather than sort of weak and fragile and annoying when like a lot of other companion NPCs can be in other games, where often it's like a mission you have to take them from point A to B, and they're down all the time. But the idea was to sort of flip it where you literally have to use Alan to get through the game, otherwise you're helpless. So you're sort of dependent on him.
When you said that, I just want to ask real fast. Alan's personality, is he like really confident? Like he feels powerful and he can kind of guide you and help you. Like when you say that, when you're talking about the personality of your
Mm.
companion characters, is that an aspect or is it more just his abilities are much more powerful?
It's sort of all his dialogue is sort of where his character is shown more so. He's not meant to be sort of confident or say that he's powerful,
Mhm.
um, but he is. He is a lot more powerful than you, and you are dependent on him.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So, what was the rest of the question about
No,
Alan?
that kind of answered it. It's more. I was wondering if it was more his abilities, his stats, or it comes across in his personality, the way that he communicates, the way he talks to you. He
Okay.
he's a confident, powerful character that where you feel possibly like weak and like this world will just eat you alive. He feels like he can really help you. Uh, that's kind of maybe what I'm getting.
I guess it's a combination of those things, really. So it comes through in his character and the dialogue, that he's just a very optimistic, sort of cheery uh, robot. But it's also in the gameplay. So like one of the core mechanics is, well, or I guess the sort of defining mechanic is, he helps you get past certain obstacles. Like for example, right at the game, he you can direct him to certain ledges, and he will go to that ledge and sort of offer his hand sort of down so that you can jump up higher to get, and he sort of pulls you up.
Hmm.
And then he can also like push really heavy boulders that you physically can't as the player. So so he kind of represents this. Oh, he's really strong, but and you are sort of competent in terms of combat, which is another part. But you literally need him to do certain things like push boulders out of the way or get up to high ledges. Um, and then
You
in the combat, the dynamic is I've sort of changed it quite a lot, but the current dynamic, which I'm really happy with, is that the player does the sort of the damage, the fighting against the mutant enemies, but and Alan explains right at the start that he cannot harm any living creature, which sort of is like quite a traditional sort of I guess sort of law of robotics thing, right? Where they're
yeah,
not allowed, that it's in their programming they can't harm
Isaac
humans.
Asimov, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
pointed.
that's the
Yeah,
one. Yeah. So he does help you in combat, but he says he can only slow them down. So he'll hold big enemies still, uh, so that you can attack them and they're not attacked back. And he sort of
interesting.
like throws them away from you so that you can focus on fighting other enemies. But then he also has sort of special abilities like a force field, where it's kind of I guess like an ultimate ability almost, where like every few minutes you can use a special ability. And the first one you get is a force field, where it's just sort of you're protected for 10 seconds and you can attack enemies without them hurting you, and you can sort of push them away. Um, so he's like a really strong support character in terms of combat and like solving puzzles as you go through the game.
One aspect in the description is Metroidvania.
Mm.
I didn't play or I'm unfamiliar with the Metroidvania genre. I mean, if it branches off Castlevania, I'm very familiar. But maybe you
Yeah,
could speak to that. I might not know a lot of these things you're referencing, and people that are very familiar with Metroidvania probably would understand a lot better.
yeah, it's Metrovania. It comes from it's a combination of Metroid and Castlevania,
Yeah.
and I think it essentially describes like an open world where you get to new areas through keys that you find, and those keys are usually items. So I think in Metroid there are certain items you absolutely need to get through certain doors. And yeah, I think those are the sort. It's a exploration focused open
Hmm.
world game where you require items to unlock the next sort of area. I think is sort of the top level way to describe them. And it's quite interesting really, because when I started making this game, I didn't realize it was a Metroidvania
Yeah.
till about a year ago when I realized, oh crap, I've basically made a Metroidvania. I'm going to start saying it is, because it had basically everything that a typical Metroidvania might have. And but the most popular ones that people know are Hollow Knight, and well, that is by far the most common one, Hollow
Have
Knight,
you
and then
played it?
two
Have you
other
play
little ones.
tested it with a really strict Metroidvania audience that like because I yeah some of my other interviews are like yeah your audiences can be pretty like judgmental and picky if you don't do exactly this and this.
Mm.
Um, have you gotten
I
anything
haven't
like that?
done I haven't done like a lot of playtesting specifically with Metroidvania fans. I have asked questions in the Metroidvania Reddit though, which was
Yeah.
quite intimidating, and
Yeah.
because they're exactly like you said, where I asked a question about um, should I have a map in my game
Hmm.
and as a Metroidvania, and I basically got like 300 comments saying, "You idiot! Of course you need a map in
Yeah.
Metroidvania."
Yeah.
So, because I was like, "Oh, I probably should have one, but I haven't got one yet. I'll see
Hmm.
what they think." No, that was like an absolute must.
Interesting.
So
Yeah. That's a really
yeah,
interesting detail.
so that's I think the main thing that I think they would have caught on to if I had released it and didn't have a map.
Yeah.
Um, but other than that, there are people who are fans of Metroidvanias have played it, and I don't think they had many sort of Metroidvania specific
Yeah.
um, issues with it.
Does it have to be 2D platformer, or is Metroidvania sometimes 3D? Like,
No, it's sometimes 3D. I think
ah,
the majority are side-scrolling 2D games, but
yeah,
there's definitely 3D games where uh, it's an the open world is 3D and you unlock new areas with abilities
yeah.
and it's focused on exploration and that basically fits the same criteria but in a 3D world. So yeah, I think it's just less common.
So no spoilers. What can you say about this world? Are you on Earth? Like, is it post-apocalyptic Earth? I guess it says
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic. You assume it's Earth, but maybe it could have put like. So one of the main themes of this game is there's these massive worm, you
Hmm.
know, monsters that seem to be a main character, some kind of main character. So
Yeah.
can you say like, yeah, probably you can't say spoiler wise how they got to Earth or whatnot, but you know, what can you speak to that?
Uh, yeah. So it is post-apocalyptic. It's the idea is it's set 100 years in the future, way after the nuclear apocalypse, basically.
Hmm.
That's what created the desert that you're in, and everything around you has been affected by radiation. And sort of the underlying mystery of the wasteland sort of centers around the worms. So there's not a lot in the demo about it, but there are sort of bits of like lore sort of on notes around the world and a few sort of things that you find on the walls that indicate a cult of the worm.
Mm.
And then, yeah, the story sort of, there's a lot of things that are teased about how the worms got to where they are, why they're there, and how they got so big. But yes, if I was to say exactly how they got how they are, I think it would sort of give away
Yeah.
the sort of main story of the game. It's
Yeah.
not revealed in the demo, but it is sort of a big part of the full game that I plan to uh, to to implement in the story eventually.
Yeah. So based on what I'm seeing in the world, looks like almost nothing grows. You know, like you said, it's a desert.
Mm.
Um, you know, I see a couple shrubs and stuff like that, but it's like no rain or something. Like all the
Hmm.
life was everything destroyed, kind of in a nuclear situation. Is that
Yeah,
like a war destroyed the world?
pretty much. That's the idea. There's not a lot explaining how it got to that point, but I think as I sort of develop the world as I go, there'll be like more sort of explained to you as you go along. But yeah, essentially it was a big nuclear apocalypse. Big war happened. Lots of radiation left over, as there would be from nuclear explosions, and that sort of leads to all these sort of giant mutant insects you find around the world, like massive spiders and enormous mosquitoes and yeah, giant worms as well, and all that kind of thing. Um,
Cool.
yeah, and
Um,
yeah, there's not a lot of plant life either. It's just a very barren, dangerous environment, and there are um, parts of the game where rather than water, there are like acid lakes and things like that.
Hmm.
So sort of radiation lakes and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And the style is this. It's a cool. Yeah, it's pixel art. In the image, some of the robot looks super cool. I love this. One of the images of like the big fly with the dangling legs and stuff coming down.
Mm.
That's awesome. Yeah, some of the bug characters and stuff. Um, I think that's a good place to shift gears and get into your background a little bit,
Mm.
because and then we can wrap up with any details we missed on the game. But I like to know, you know, where you come from. Do you have a background in games? You know, like how'd you get into making this game? Uh, where are you living for starters? You're in the UK, London.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
No, I live in a city called Gloucester, which is in Gloucestershire, sort of near the Cotswolds, which I think a lot of people know.
Hmm.
I grew up in Cheltenham, which is near here.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of yeah, a lot more sort of rural than London, not near any sort of big city really.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, yeah, in terms of my background, I am a software engineer, so I'm sort of a programmer
Mm-hmm.
in my day job. Um, but I sort of I've always I think when I was learning to program when I was a kid at school, I sort of when I realized that games are made through programming, I was sort of that was kind of my motivation for a long time, and I went through university thinking, oh, I'd love to program games eventually,
Mm-hmm.
but that just sort of never happened, and I just sort of landed on a fairly comfortable software engineer job, sort of near my hometown anyway, and I sort of forgot
Well,
about sort of the dream to make games, but.
when you say that, it's interesting to me. Like it sounds like you're young. You're like in high school or something, you believe that you're gonna be like you're into programming. It seems like you understand programming at that age, and
Mm,
then you believe that you could be a software engineer. But the separation between software and making video games, you feel like that the two things are like very separated or something like that. You're like you're sounds like you're confident in yourself and your programming abilities, but then you
mm.
don't believe in yourself that you could make video games, or you don't pursue the path of making video games. Am I on point
Yeah,
there? Is that
yeah, I think you're spot on there. Basically, I knew that the games industry is very competitive,
yeah,
and I mean it still is. It probably is even more competitive nowadays. And I wouldn't even say I'm in the game industry yet. I just have a game that I'm making in my spare time,
yeah,
which yeah, eventually I'll put it on Steam and maybe get one sale or something, but we shall see. But it's there's definitely it took me a long time to think like you know what like I probably could do this. That was definitely a confidence issue where I was doing a lot of programming in my job and I really like doing it. But just everything else that comes with game development just was very intimidating,
mm,
and it felt like only like the AAA games were like that seemed like the only quality bar, and if I couldn't if I had no idea how to do that, then why bother.
mm,
But then sort of yeah, one day I was like no, I don't know, I think I suddenly got more confident and I gave it a go, and I started making a game, and then I got more confident and learned more how to do things in Unity, and commissioned my first sort of sprites for this
mm,
game. And from that point on, I sort of built on that as I went, and sort of really enjoyed the process. And I've just been sort of learning as I go, really. So like, I think the main key is sort of even if you feel like there's so much to learn, and there is a lot to learn.
yeah,
If you really enjoy doing it, you should definitely just give it a go because it's the most satisfying creative thing that I've done in
Yeah.
my life
Yeah.
at all. Like it's such a good outlet for me,
Uh-huh.
and it sort of relaxes me, and it make it I just can't think of anything I'd rather do.
I I mean I find this sort of your perspective on things like semi fascinating because my background comes from art, and so I could draw
Mm,
pictures when I was in high school. I barely graduated high school. I definitely couldn't do coding, or had no idea. And to stare at a drawing in a sketchbook and go, okay, how's this going to turn into a video game? And then see like lines of code and go like, well, I could never do that. So it's
mm,
like, and you understanding code at a young age and then being intimidated by all the other stuff, it feels like this very opposite world. um
exactly. Yeah.
uh how do you feel now, like like once you sort of understood engineering for games, did it like really click into place where you're like, wow, like I'm really good at this aspect of game development. Like my gameplay programming is really better than a lot of the other stuff I've seen. Like, do you feel confident like that?
I'd say I do. Yeah. I don't. I wouldn't say I'm not sure how I can compare to other gameplay programmers. But I'm definitely very confident in my ability to write good gameplay code because that was part of the reason why I like really enjoyed it at the start because um, I had learned how to properly like um, architect systems in my job, and that sort of that applied to sort of game programming because I sort of as I was making the game right at the start, I made I tried to structure it in a way where um, everything was quite organized and sort of done in a way that isn't too messy. Like a lot of people when they're coding games, they just um, do what they can to make it work without much thought about how the rest of the system's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was at my job, I was like sketching out like a little system diagram and thinking, all right, I'm going to have a character class, and then under that, there's going to be attacks that they all share,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to have separate controllers for enemies and characters and things like that. So I really enjoyed like the technical side of sort of architecting the sort of the back systems
Yeah.
of the game as well.
Yeah.
Um,
it's
but
it's
but
really
yeah,
fun.
in that sense, I'm quite confident in that, and I think just the fact that I really enjoy doing it is like a big positive and a big bonus as well.
I so it's like, I'm really familiar obviously with code now.
Mm,
But this, to go from, I guess, I don't think I think the big disconnect between general like full stack engineering and and gameplay programming is that, in general engineering you're dealing like a lot with iterations, like loops and
hmm
no time iterations, and then you move. The main thing about games is you're dealing with frames. Would you agree
mm.
that that's kind of the big disconnect between these two styles of engineering?
Yeah, I'd say it's fairly different. I guess the sort of systems programming is a lot about sort of passing data around to the right places and hooking
Yeah.
things up to databases and all the other stuff that comes with full stack, like setting up servers and getting networking working and hooking things up to front ends and APIs and things like that.
Yeah.
And it and yeah, I guess the sort of thinking about how things work in terms of um, frames is yeah a fairly decent distinction. I think um, I guess I consider them fairly similar in terms of sort of a lot of the game code is in like one sort of update loop, right? So
Yeah.
for example, in Unity, it's like fixed update, and that's your core gameplay loop, and you have everything execute within that per sort of object you have. So I guess it is. it's different because yeah, that's always running. Whereas sort of a like an API you might write for a system at work might it's just like a just gets called a few times from a UI or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's quite different in that sense. Yeah.
Do you do you still enjoy kind of your general software work, or once you got into games, was it just like games are super exciting, and then the general work is just sort of like the old or something like that?
Yeah. No, I still really enjoy coding at work and programming and figuring things out.
Hmm.
It's definitely I definitely prefer games programming. I haven't been quiet about that either. Like if I could quit my job and be a full-time game developer, that is exactly what I'd do. But
Hmm.
feasibly, that's not possible yet. Um, and may never be, but we'll see. But yeah, no, I still really enjoy programming. The issue with sort of a lot of software engineer jobs nowadays are that it's rare that you are sitting down and actually coding. Like it's especially in sort of the area that I work in, it's sort of very more about sort of hooking up different systems and integrating
Hmm.
things like that and all the
Yeah.
other the fun that comes with that rather than sitting down and just just
Yeah.
programming like
Yeah.
one bit of functionality, which that I really enjoy that. It's just all the other faff that I'm not
Yeah.
as interested in.
Yeah. It's more like you're plugging in a bunch of different front ends, and you're
Mm.
not working with lower level stuff. Like,
Yeah,
uh, yeah,
yeah,
I can definitely see that.
and then whereas in games it's just if I want a new thing, it's always I need to write some code for it. So there's just a new functionality is code. It's not me integrating with some other
Yeah.
rubbish. It's just it's all programming, so it's great.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, you know, coding from a young age, you grew up in software. And do you have any dreams like next project? Is this the beginning project, or are you hoping to make update this version, or do you have a bigger project after this one releases?
Um, so yeah, so I'm hoping to make more games. But yeah, this has been such a long project. I need to just fully focus on getting this done first, and then see what happens. But I have started a limited company as of 2 months. Yeah, February. I made an actual games company
Cool.
ready for when I do um,
What's the name of that
release.
again?
Burning Fort Games.
Burning Fork Games. Cool.
Yeah, so it was really cool when I went to my first convention this weekend, just gone. It was DreamHack in
Mm.
Birmingham,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that went really well. But I had to, um, yeah, got to get like t-shirt Burning Fort Games t-shirts printed and business cards and banners and things like that. Um, but
Cool.
yeah, I feel like a real company now. But the goal is yeah, release this game eventually, and then just continue trying to make games in my spare time until it gets to a point where it can, I guess, sustain me. But yeah, we shall see. That's
The,
a very long time way in the future.
Yeah. So if you were to start another project right now, would you go
Mm.
bigger scope, or would you try just do a game that you knock out in like a month or something like that, just to feel the in between?
I think that's quite a common idea, is right to when people get sucked into games that take forever, they want to do a quick one that they can get out the door.
Yeah.
Um, but I sort of have a similar idea, but I have a I know what my next game is going to be because I've thought of it like a year ago and it's still in my head and I'm like, oh, I really want to make this, but like I'm trying not to get distracted. But
Hmm.
it's going to be basically a game I can play with my friends and I want to call it Run Over Your Friends. So it's kind of very self-explanatory.
Hmm.
It's sort of a little multiplayer um, last one standing sort of car racing game where one person is like a I guess just sort of a person running around.
Hmm.
Um, but sorry, that there's one person in a car,
Hmm.
everyone else is running around, and you have to run them over, and then they become like another car. So it's kind of there's a few game modes in. I think there's a game mode in Call of Duty called Infected. So it's very similar to that. It's like last one standing, but it's all about running people over. And I think that would be quite fun. I think I'd enjoy playing that with my friends. So it's a sort of a very different pivot to like a 3D multiplayer
Yeah,
game, but still like fairly small in scope because once that core loop is working, that's pretty much it,
yeah.
rather than a big story and a big world and things like that.
It sounds like the type of game that you could probably build a prototype, a rough prototype, pretty fast and get
Yeah.
people testing it and play testing it like
Hmm.
really soon, and then
Yeah.
you could not worry about going crazy with it for a long time. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
exactly. That's the
it,
big appeal that I could just test it quickly.
yeah, I think that's a good strategy, and that again is another one that a lot of people come to after they make their first game is like, oh, I should get people play testing this much earlier than
Hmm.
I did originally. Um,
Definitely. Yeah.
so I think we could wrap things up a little bit. I wanted to, as I wrap things up, I like to get back into the game and ask. You said you went to an event and you had like a good amount of people play testing it. What was your experience with people play testing it? Is there anything like any big pitfalls that you saw, like were people like really confused about this or that?
So yeah, there was there's a fairly long list of sort of minor feedback I got. But luckily, it wasn't the first lot of feedback I had because I did a Steam play test, which sort of helped me iron out a lot of bugs and a lot of issues with the gameplay. And then I also, when I released the demo, I encouraged people to join in my Discord and leave feedback in there as well, which is really, really good. So that was in November last year. So I had about 3 or 4 months to sort of improve on the demo from then. Um, but the feedback I got watching people play in person was really encouraging. I think a lot of the issues were sort of how I taught how to use like Alan's like sort of command mechanic because
Hmm.
it's designed for a controller and you press like Y, you move the right analog stick to sort of aim where you want him to go,
Hmm.
and then it will snap onto certain things that he can interact with, like a boulder, for example. But I think it's just the way I presented that sort of little UI bit of instruction. Like a lot of people sort of struggled to understand that.
Yeah,
So that was like a sort of the major sort of thing. It's sort of communicating how this sort of weird mechanic that you don't really see very often works. Like communicating how the combat works is fine because every Metroidvania has attacking and dodging and things like that, and that
yeah,
was super simple. But yeah, this sort of weird little mechanic, um, it took a few people like a bit to understand it, but once they got it, they were like, "Oh, that's how you do it," and then it was fine for the rest of it. It's just that initial sort of friction of how to do that. I think I'm gonna improve, and it was really great the fact that I had so many other game developers around me. There was one lady from another team who came over, and she, even though she is a game programmer and a game developer, she really couldn't figure it out. And then after she figured it out, she said, "Oh, you should do it this exact way. You should like flash up the Y button,
yeah,
and then once they click the Y, change that symbol to like right analog stick, and
yeah.
then change it to a Y. So it's like rather than because right now it says Y analog stick and Y all at once, and you're like, what does that all mean?" But
Hmm.
so yeah, it was
Yeah,
yeah,
just like a
mostly
little
sort of
change
UI
like that.
things.
Yeah, uh,
Yeah, just sort of little sort of user experience things mostly. Um,
can be
I'd
more
say.
important than like entire like miles of script or something like that, just changing some kind of
exactly.
user interface communication
Yeah, yeah,
detail.
and yeah, exactly. And those sort of details are so important because a lot of people get to that point, think, "Oh, I don't understand," and then quit. And that's like 2 minutes into the game.
Yeah.
So, and I think I have lost a fair amount of people who have downloaded the demo, got to that bit, and then quit because you can look at your Steam stats and see how the like percentage of people that play like less than 5 minutes or something like that, and it was fairly high. Like there were quite a few people that played like over an hour because that's sort of how long it takes to complete, but there seemed to be quite a high percentage of people who quit like very early on, and I'm pretty sure it's like the sort of early friction of um, probably teaching that mechanic is probably the main thing.
It's really good advice. I mean, it's a really good that thing for you to explain, because I think everybody that makes games is going to have this same problem. Whether you
Mm.
think that your game is like super intuitive, that's the worst thing in the world. Like even game, even if you tried to copy Mario Brothers, like just putting the button in the wrong place would throw people off.
Yeah.
Um, so your experience going through this is very good feedback to anybody developing.
Mm.
Um,
100%. Yeah.
I, I like to also, so as we kind of ramp down, I like to ask you if someone, the demo right now is available on Steam. I want to say anybody
Mhm.
watching this, go download the demo. And I wanted to ask if there's anything you want to say to that person who is just about to download it. Like, you just explained, I think, this control behavior that you're working on. But is there anything else you want to tell someone?
Um, I think the main thing I'd like to say is sort of I'm leaning heavily into like vibes and atmosphere, and I think it takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes for someone to sort of get into the atmosphere of the game. Because I think quite often, like give it 10 minutes, and
Yeah,
then sort of make your decision if it's a game for you or not. Because I really do feel like once people are into it, they're like, oh, there's lots of like really cool things here, and the world is a nice vibe, and the mechanics are fairly unique in terms of Alan. And that's not even talking about the worm fields that a lot of people in the play when they were playtesting didn't even get to the worm fields, which I think are a really unique sort of mechanic.
cool.
And I wanted more people to get to them, but I was super happy with how they turned out.
Yeah.
Um, but that sort of requires you to get like reasonably far into the demo to experience, because there's sort of a quest that takes you around the sort of opening bit of the world, and you have to go through the worm fields to complete the quest.
Was
Um,
the worm fields like, was that a driving inspiration for you from the beginning? Like, did you have a vision of this worm fields mechanic uh, before?
not before I started making the game, but as I was doing it, it did sort of pop into my head that a giant worm would be really cool as an
Hmm.
enemy, rather than just I don't know, a thing in like the lore or something. I think if it was actually something that you could in the game sort of try and get past through some clever sort of puzzly type mechanic,
Hmm.
I think that would be a really unique thing, and it sort of turned out to be quite like that, and I'm quite sort of happy with how it turned out.
Cool.
Um, and yeah, I should also say that I should have said earlier the world is inspired um, by Dune and by Fallout, so there's sort of
Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the giant. That's like the first thing people say. They say, "Oh, is this inspired by Dune or copying Dune?" I was like,
Hmm.
"Well, the worms are inspired by Dune, but that's about it when it comes to Dune inspirations." But there's like the sort of the robot and the sci-fi aspect is more from like Fallout, and the post-apocalyptic world is sort of Fallout inspired. Um, yeah,
Cool. Um, with that, I think we could wrap it up. It's been an awesome talk with Jack about his game Vitrified. Get it on Steam now. Download the demo, get to the worms part, because that sounds really awesome. And if you like these videos, check out some of my other interviews. All right, thanks.
Cheers.